Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Elements. Today's episode is honestly a learning experience for me as well because we are discussing something I realize we rarely talk about properly in the corporate world. How companies often judge communication style before understanding actual capability. Joining us today is Russell Van Brocklin, a New York State Senate funded dyslexia researcher whose work focuses on helping people improve writing, communication, and confidence through structured learning methods. So, today we are exploring dyslexia, hidden talent, workplace confidence, and what leaders may be missing when evaluating people. Russell, welcome to Corporate Elements.
Thanks for having me.
So, before we get into the corporate side of the things, I'd love to start with your journey. What first led you into dyslexia research and the specific area of work?
Well, it's not corporate, but it was government. What happened was it was the late 90s. I wanted to know how laws were created, not some class I wanted to know. So I signed up for the New York State Assembly internship program. And this is going to dovetail exactly how big organizations work. It was just government, not corporate. So I show up and I said, here's my neuropsychological evaluation. I have a first grade reading and writing level, like a 6-year-old. So I just could not do the assignments. I could not do the internship the way it was designed. So Sheldon Silver was the speaker of the New York State Assembly at that point, and it went up to him and he said, "You're not getting rid of this kid. You're going to accommodate the living daylights out of him." So what they did is they literally pulled me out of the legislative office building. They moved me over to the Majority Leaders Program and Council's office, where it ran the assembly day to day. And I walked in, I immediately see why they did it. They had 3 administrative assistants that could help me with my writing problem. Now people can accommodate that with a $200 a month subscriptions to ChatGPT or Anthropic. So they really helped me correct my horrendous writing. Turn that in for I spent nights and weekends. They really liked me. They had no idea what to do with an undergrad. So they treated me like a graduate student, which is a real internship. So for the academic portion, I gave an hours long presentation, Q&A instead of the paper. They wrapped up all that, sent it back to the State University of New York Center at Buffalo Political Science Department, recommending 15 credits of A minus. They didn't like the accommodations the state government came up with, so they decided to lower my grade. Guess what they lowered it to? 15 credits of F. They flunked me.
Oh,
So at that point, I said, I'm going to solve dyslexia. So I asked my professors where I could go to force myself to learn to read and write in grad school. And they said, well, if you like politics, it's obvious, law school. So I walk in, and this is going to give your corporate people an idea of the advantages of dyslexia. So just know what it is. This is a book called Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Sally Shaywitz from Yale. That's dyslexia. You see how the back part of your brain has this massive neural activity? This is the normal brain. See how the back part of mine has like nothing?
yeah,
But the front part of my brain's about 2.5 times overactive.
yes.
Now you're going to see what happens when the dyslexic goes to grad school. What happens in American law schools is if you don't know what the answer is, they use the Socratic method. They will ask you questions you can't answer to embarrass you publicly until you eventually can. That didn't happen to me. I didn't answer the professor, who was a professor longer than I was alive at that point. I didn't answer the professor as a student. I answered the professor as his equal. He went after me, I attacked him. He attacked me, I attacked him. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We can't beat each other. He throws up his arms and said, Russell, you couldn't be any more correct. In the interest of time, I have to move on to the next case. I learned to read within a month. I learned to write within a couple of years. Then I went back to the New York State Senate and I said, I want you to fund my dyslexia research program, which they don't do. So we went through all this for years with the New York State Education Department. Finally got approval for a 2-year study at the Averill Park Central School District, where I went to high school, right outside of Albany, New York, our state capital. I want everybody to know I focused on extremely motivated, extremely intelligent dyslexic high school students, juniors and seniors, I think 16 to 18. They're writing like they're 12 to 13. One class period a day for the school year. They increased their writing to the average range of entering graduate students. Think college graduates at 21 to 22. They all went on to college. They all graduated, GPAs of 2.5 to 3.6. Let's look at the numbers. My best competition at the time was Landmark College. We were 3 times as successful as they were for less than 1% of the cost. They were over 100K. We were less than $900. And that's how I got started.
I understand that you're not approaching it from the limitation perspective, and you took opportunity from your personal realization of challenges and took it forward to bring out in the world and make it more relevant to the people, because we understand that this needs to be changed. And mostly that is such an important point, because in corporate environments fast communication often get confused with intelligence. And about writing especially, I think more required in the corporate world, because you speak quickly in the meetings, you respond instantly on Slack, and you write polished emails, and they're often perceived as strongest contributor. But the deep thinkers, they don't always present that way. And I understand that some people process information differently, and some people need more structure before they express the idea. And yet, those some people may actually have better strategic thinking. So now, at the current moment, when we spoke about ChatGPT is available, do you think that the modern workplaces sometimes reward presentation more than substance?
Well, anytime you're dealing with any sort of business, what you have to understand is in the age of artificial intelligence, and just so people know what my background is with that, when ChatGPT came out with its $200 pro plan, I bought it that day. I am literally one of those people that does more than 10x the work an educated person would do in 10 hours. I do it in one. All right. We actually do exist. So what I want to describe to you is we are in a K-shaped economy. Those who really, let me give you an example. There's a company that I heard in a podcast. They write research reports for the top organizations in the world. Exactly what artificial intelligence is supposed to put out of business. They said in December they set a budget for 2026 at 700,000. They're past 7 million right now. They project at the end of the year, sooner in 27, they're going to be spending more on AI than they do on salaries. So the people that can work with AI efficiently are going to do incredibly well. Those who can't, it's not going to look good. So what I want to describe to you is I don't give tips, I give solutions. So we're talking about the corporate world. Let's give your company something that they can use, they can understand how outrageously advantages to actually have a dyslexic to work with them, to understand this, and to help with them to communicate their message much more clearly. Because it used to be 30, 40 years ago, we could do the broad brush. Now we have to do something laser focused to communicate our message. So I'd like you just to give me a corporate communication problem, and let's figure out how to make it so much better right here live.
I
So
came
what?
across
Yeah, so go ahead. Give me the problem.
I came across a discussion online where someone wrote that I avoid speaking in meetings because I'm scared I'll explain things badly, even when I know the answer. And honestly, I think many professionals relate to that, not just dyslexic professionals. So, what's happening psychologically in situations like that?
Well, I'm just going to tell you how to solve the problem. Okay. And let's
Okay.
just go so you know what the science is. This is again the book Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Sally Chawich from Yale. So we're just going to go. We got nothing going on back here, but the front part, you see how we have 2.5 times the neural activity? That deals with word analysis followed by articulation. So what I'm about to show you is how to fix that. Okay, so you have no, you're trying to communicate something. You know it. You're a trained professional. But how do we do that? We use something called a universal theme. And I'm going to explain to you initially how we do that in a movie review. It looks like it's coming out of the middle of nowhere, but that's how dyslexic solutions happen. All right, it'll make sense very shortly. So, first thing I need you to do is tell me a movie that meets three criteria. You know it intimately. You think it's one of the best movies of all time, and everybody's seen it. What's the name of that movie?
Inception.
Inception. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a very difficult question. I need you to reduce Inception to a one word universal theme that best represents that movie in your opinion, that's original to you.
Sci fi.
No, not sci-fi. That's too generic. Something that's original to you. Your original viewpoint.
You are saying one word
One word. That's all you get.
regarding the movie that needs to be that needs to
Yes.
define
Don't
it.
no. Don't type on it. Don't ask ChatGPT. What's the word?
It was at that time when it was released, it was mind bending for me.
Mind bending. But that's two words. I need one.
Surreal.
So, okay. Do you see how long that took you? Now, for you managers out there, here's what's going on. We're dealing in the front part of the brain. I have 2.5 times the neural activity in that part. You're
Hmm.
now playing in my sandbox. You go to a dyslexic, they answer that almost instantly. All right. So
But isn't that the
let's
good
go.
thing?
Yeah, I'm showing there are times where being dyslexic is really freaking unfair. This is one of them. So if we were to do a movie review on Surreal, What we would do is we would ask how the actors did, that were the most important, the director, how the screenwriter did when we write our review. The problem with that is it's broad brush. That's so 1990s. We have to get much more specific. So how do we do that? We're going to go and just look at Shakespeare's for a second. I want you to think back to high school to any Shakespeare play. Why am I mentioning Shakespeare? Because he was the ultimate in communication in English history. So we have a hero. Hero wants to do something based on one or more universal themes. Then we come up with an ultimate villain that's a character based on some concepts and some universal themes to try to stop the hero from accomplishing their goal. They have a conflict in Act One, accelerate to Act Two, like crazy, resolve in Act Three. Sound familiar?
Yes.
We now need to simplify that.
So is this the word analysis first method you emphasize on?
Yes. Now, if you want to know how to improve your writing, okay, what we're going to do is just see what I just showed you is an advanced form of word analysis. Okay. Now, for the dyslexics, they all do this manually. All right. And that's how I teach them to read. Now, if you want, now I'm going to show you how to improve your paragraph writing for anybody outside of a doctoral candidate, PhD candidate. So then what we do is we have to do we have to do articulation. We go because three good reasons. Okay. And
Yes.
for each of those reasons, what we would do is reduce that to a one word universal thing. Let's just go back to your movie script as an example. We would take that first reason, reduce it to a one word universal theme, go and find a sentence, that script that deals exactly with, we find a sentence that deals exactly with that universal theme at the beginning of the movie and one at the end. Those are two quotes. You can use this for corporate meetings, whatever. So this is your own process. We take those two quotes, put them together. From there, we create a topic sentence. Now, have you ever noticed in your education that we would have a topic sentence and your data, and it never flowed very well between the two? Have you noticed that?
Yes.
So what we would do is we would add a warrant. A warrant comes from a book called The Craft of Research from the University of Chicago that teaches graduate students to write their doctoral dissertation. It has sold over 1 million copies in the past 31 years. So how you connect the topic sentence to your data is by answering a how and a why question.
Okay. That's fascinating. Because in my personal experience, when I use ChatGPT, I'm never satisfied with the result. Because when I start with an idea, it is like broader, like you said. But if I come up with that one word I want to communicate, it will really help me narrow down. And speaking of writing, I have seen that because most workplace they focus on surface level communication tips. That is like they expect you to speak confidently, maintain eye contact, and use executive language. This is even if the podcast is corporate related, I try to use the human side of the wordings. And because what you're talking about sounds deeper, almost like rebuilding clarity from the foundation itself. And so, do you think many professionals struggle not because they lack intelligence, but because they never build confidence around this language and communication?
Well, they just don't have a process in how to do it. So, just what I did, this is the top book in the field of dyslexia. The Craft of Research is the top book in how to do your doctoral dissertation. I just combine the two and simplify them so I can teach it to 11-year-olds. And it works really well with Gen Eds. Let me give you an example. One of the kids we're working with now, his name is Grayson. He's not dyslexic in the least. He's in the 99th percentile for math and 99th percentile for science. Okay. This is the same. He is not dyslexic in the least. He's 99th percentile science and math kid. And I am literally teaching him stuff that I would teach to a 21-year-old PhD student, 22-year-old PhD student. All right.
So,
And
wha-
this is the same thing that we would do in corporate. Let's say you're doing research. This is the exact same process that we'd focus on. We have to show you how to come up with a problem statement. Because if you don't know how to come up with a question that is worth answering with a lot of economic resources and come out with a really much better solution, if you can't ask that question, I don't know how you're going to function in the corporate world. You need to be able to figure that out. That's what the stars
hmm,
do. And just so you know what the economics of this is going back a couple of months, which in AI is everything. There was one
wow.
report that I read that it took an average of 146 days to find a person with these skills. That there's 3.1 jobs for each person who has them, and they're in the United States. They're charging hundreds of thousands of dollars because they can walk in and literally 10x what most people can do. The very best people can push up to way higher than 10x. And these employees are demanding a huge increase in pay. And if you can't, somebody else will just pay them. There is a line for people with those skills.
I'm just so moved because many people associate dyslexia only with academic struggle. and your work is basically helping them not just with working with their brain, but also communicating and finding themselves in in the phases of life. Because I know, like you just mentioned, most even professionals don't know what they want, and especially in environments built around emails, presentation, reports, meeting, documentation, and constant communication. And this must create a huge emotional burden over time, does it? Because when someone repeatedly feels misunderstood, they eventually stop putting themselves forward. I've seen this in meetings where if your one idea is disregarded only because you're not able to put the idea with right words on the table. So people eventually stop volunteering and they stop speaking in meetings and they stop taking visibility opportunities. So how does this confidence often fits into the mechanism and slowly over the years rather than instantly, how it works?
Well, let me give you an example. Did you ever hear of this show called Shark Tank? Okay. Dyslexics make up 5 to 10% of the population max. Half the sharks are dyslexic. Barbara, Mr. Wonderful, and Damien.
Really?
Yes, we are represented hugely, way overpopulated with CEOs and business leaders because we were treated so horribly. So the question that it comes down to is how do we, what is, I just want to kind of go over what the advantages of what a dyslexic is. Let me give you an example. One of my clients right now, his name is Miles. His father has spent a career is corporate law, board of directors, investment bank. He's incredibly well connected. Miles is ADHD, which is like dyslexia without the reading and writing problem. So he set his son up in a very expensive. I spent 30 minutes to an hour a day, 7 days a week, working on what the new developments are in AI and how to incorporate them in my workflow. And there's no way I'm even scratching the surface of keeping up.
Think mostly no one use AI to this extent because you're using it as a tool to find a tailored resolution for your students, and
Yes.
that is working very effectively. You just mentioned Shark Tank guests, Mr. Wonderful and Barbara. We believe that this is a stigma, if I may say, in my country, that dyslexic mostly are the people who struggle academically earlier in their life, but later they become successful professionals, resonating with the example you just mentioned. So, are there common traits?
Yes. The thing about dyslectics is we are excel in our speciality, our area of extreme interest and ability, which is grad school. How far did you go in your education?
I have done graduation, and after that, I did some certifications in my area of field of expertise. I'm into compliance, so I have a fraud examining license.
Did you ever do a master's level, grad level courses?
I did grad level.
Okay. Do you notice that when you're in grad level, this is not let's go and have fun. This is drastically you learn at a drastically higher rate and you go much deeper and
Yes,
you actually master. Have you ever wondered when were in your master's program how some of those people got in there?
with they got in there by knowing what they want. Like they
No,
were
but
clear.
a lot of people when they go to grad school, what they'll find is that there were people that dominate in undergrad. They were good parrots. They could take in information and probably want a quacker, just regurgitate it on a test. But at a master's program, you have to apply what you've learned. If you can't do that, you're not going to do well. So I did a lot of grad school in a lot of different subjects. And I would go in and it happened almost every time. It was in my speciality, and then I would just dominate things. I remember I took a class that was allowed to audit from one of the top business professors in the United States at one of the top 5 business programs. And I could just see little things that nobody else saw. And I mentioned that to him, and he said I was one of his top students that he's ever had. Okay. That's the advantage of just seeing things. So, what I'd like to tell those of you who are Gen Ed, you take what I've shown you tonight and apply that and work with a dyslexic. You just kind of take on the writing role. You want ideas, give it to a dyslexic. You will see ideas spilling from their heads like you can't believe. So, I literally would talk to a lot of Gen Ed people who did great in school, but they're having trouble with all these advanced things. And I'd say, well, you need to find your dyslexic. And some of them would actually go and do that. And they said, wow, it's a great partnership. I just offered to write up the reports and to organize things. And now I'm getting all these fantastic ideas, and I just have to do the writing and the organization. And the dyslexic I would talk to would say, "Oh, this is fantastic. I just have to spew out the ideas and they take care of all the rest." Our brains are exactly opposite. And I've seen people climb the corporate ladder that way.
Wow,
Just remember, you start that partnership with a dyslexic, it's a long term partnership.
it does sound very insightful. I'm learning a lot today. Because with the practical insights, I want you to speak for the leadership. The person, like if you could give managers three simple things they should start doing immediately to better support employees,
Oh,
what will
that's
they do?
real easy. What you want to do if you have a dyslexic is find out what their speciality is, their area of extreme interest and ability, and then put them in that. Okay, number two, if you ask any dyslexic, ADD or ADHD, in your speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed but with little to no organization? They're going to say yes. So, what you want to do to get the most out of your dyslexic employee is don't give them instructions like this is academic, but you can translate it over. What effect did Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech have on the American civil rights movement of the 1960s? That is such a normal person's question. You guys love that. Big picture,
Mm,
eventually going down to details. For a dyslexic, it's like grabbing fog. We need to ask this question. We got to flip that over. What personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? Because we have to start something very specific and then eventually go out. So we would go to his book, find out what that answer is. We just go to that part of his life, find out why he wanted to give it. That answer will give us another question, which will give us an answer, give us a question, give us an answer. That's how you have to deal with dyslexics. Then you do word analysis followed by articulation, which I gave you an example of. But let me give you another area. Remember what I said, how the problem statement mattered? I
yes.
want you to think if you're a corporate leader, you got to come up with a problem statement so that you guys have something to work on where if you put on enough economic resources, the answer is going to be worth multiple X times that. Well, how do you do it? Well, with the dyslexic, where you start off at a specific point, you get a question, then you answer it, and then that answer gives you a question, gives you an answer. That's a skill most gen ed people have a hard time with.
Mm,
But a dyslexic, if they're properly trained in this approach, they can then work through that and eventually get to the point of a problem statement.
yes, because they think so loud, and now if they're able to, with your guidance, if an individual is able to communicate clearly the answers to
Mhm.
problem statement with the creative mind is already there, resulting into an effective into the process.
Right. Now, here's what I need you to understand. This has already been written out how to solve this. You're dealing with corporate, but it's been solved for academia. You just need to apply it. It's a book called The Craft of Research that came out in 1995 from the University of Chicago. This is how major corporations, major think tanks, this is how they want you to write and organize your thinking. I combined it with this book, Overcoming Dyslexia, and I start teaching students how to do it's context problem solution. I start teaching dyslexic students how to do this at 9. I have them fully understand how to do the whole process in high school. None of all the professors want these kids to know this before they step foot into college, and the best private schools in the United States don't go near this concept because it's too advanced. So, and just so everybody knows, did we discuss any of this before we started recording today? Okay. So you're asking me that, and I'm just telling you how to do it on the fly. I'm
I don't.
dyslexic. I can do that. If I wasn't dyslexic, I would have no idea. Let me give you an example from a communications perspective. We met on Podmatch. I was the number one guest in Podmatch in March. I was the number one guest in April. I've been in the top 6 since September. I did over 260. I did 262 podcasts my first year. If I wasn't dyslexic, I would have no clue how to do this.
Is it that challenging? Because here in my country now, it's been more than 15 years since I left college, and even my friends with their children, there was one who said once that his son is giving the ADHD symptoms, and I
Mhm.
forwarded him some podcast in line with that. There are some cities in my country who are like actively speaking about things like this, and they are working on it. But it is sad to say that at a larger level, it is not even considered as a problem statement, and it's saddening for me.
Well, if you want to
And
know how you actually solve this for kids, if you just contact Yale, remember this is from Yale medical doctors, they can tell you how to find dyslexia when there's 5 and how to solve the reading by the time they're 8. Now, they'll just
Do
tell
you
you how
have
to do it. It's all right there. If you wait until 4th and above, it's a $75,000 school for 4 to 5 years, or you work with me and the parents do it. And
so
we're
that's what I was
147 a month.
okay. This is where I
Yeah.
was coming. I wanted to understand that do you provide consultation also?
Oh, the universities produce these kids by, I mean, they said they're very inexpensive compared to people that know how to use AI.
Yeah, even we encourage because our work involved lot of eyeballing, lot of reading, and when we use AI, the generative language model, the result it creates, we have to narrow it down to exactly what we want. But if we don't start with the problem statement or we don't start with an intention or clarity what we want, the results keep going on and on and on, and we are not able to furnish the final draft. Yeah. That's a powerful note to end on. This was generally an insightful conversation. I learned so much about it today. And I think this episode will help a lot of uh, leaders and professionals to rethink how they evaluate people and how they recognize talent, most importantly, and how they create environment where different kind of thinkers can actually thrive. I think this has been the most interesting and eye-opening conversation in recent times. We did episode that are in which the guests were expertise in especially avoidant behavior, for example, narcissism. We did topic like that, and we encourage such topic, which we say is subjective in nature. But this topic is literally, I'm hoping that it will reach out to mass audience and it will help them understand what different kind of thinkers actually are and how good they are. So thank you so much for joining us on Corporate Elements.
But thanks for having me.